Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today you'll be learning a story related to success and rich luck, hard work. So the story is The Model Millionaire. Without wasting time, let's start with the lesson. The Lover. Hughie Erskine was a very good looking young man. He was liked and admired by both men and women. He never said an unkind word about anyone, but he was not very clever and never had any money. He was always changing his job and had tried everything. At one time, he had worked on the stock exchange, which had lasted for 6 months. He had been a tea merchant for a little longer than that, but soon got tired of selling tea. Then he tried selling sherry instead, but again he failed. At last he gave up trying to work and lived on £200 a year given to him by an old aunt. So here there is a person, a very good looking young man whose name is Hughie Erskine. You pronounce it as Hughie Erskine, and he was liked and admired by everyone. He was a very good person. He never said any unkind word to anybody, he never hurt anybody, and he was not clever. And he did not have any money also. He was always changing his job and he had tried almost everything. So in the beginning he had worked on a stock exchange company and it lasted for 6 months, and then he left the job. Then he started selling tea. He was a tea merchant. But again, after some time, he got tired of selling that and he quit the job. Then he tried selling sherry. Sherry is nothing but a kind of wine, but again, after some time, he quit that job. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't stay in one work for a longer time. At last, he gave up trying to work. He wasn't working. He was living on £200 a year, which was given to him by an aunt of his. Now, he was in love with a girl called Laura Merton, who was the daughter of a retired colonel. Laura loved him very much, and together they made a handsome couple. Of course, neither of them had any money. The colonel, although he liked Huey, would not allow them to get married. "Come to me, my boy, when you have got £10,000 of your own, and we will see about it," he would say. Poor Huey! He was very miserable. Now this boy, Hughie Erskine, he was in love with a girl called Laura Merton, and she was a daughter of the retired colonel. Colonel is nothing but a commanding officer in the army or the air force. Now Laura also loved him very much, and together they made a very good looking couple. Now of course neither of them had any money, and the colonel, that's the Laura's father, he liked Huey very much, but he would not allow them to get married. Reason? Because he was not having any job. So one day Colonel told Huey that when you have £10,000 of your own, you earn £10,000 by yourself, and when you have that, come to me and then we will think about yours and my daughter's wedding. And Huey was so miserable, he didn't know what to do. The painter. One morning on his way to see Laura, Huey called in to see a friend of his who lived quite near. His friend's name was Alan Trevor, and Trevor was a painter. He was a strange man with a red beard. However, he was a very clever artist, and many people bought his paintings. When Huey came in, he found Trevor finishing the full-size picture of a beggar man. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in a corner of the room. He was an old man, bent and wrinkled, with a piteous look on his face. Over his shoulder he had a ragged brown coat, all torn and dirty. His thick boots were patched and well worn, and with one hand he leaned on a rough stick. In the other hand he held out a hat for money. So one fine morning he was on his way to see Laura, but on the way he thought of meeting his friend who used to live somewhere there nearby, and his name was Alan Trevor, and he was a painter by profession. And he was a very strange man, and he had a red beard. But he was a very clever artist, and many people used to buy paintings of his. He was a very famous painter. Now, when Huey came in to meet Trevor, Trevor was actually finishing a picture, a painting of a beggar man, and the beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in the corner of that room. And he was an old man, and we all know how a beggar looks like. So he was bent and he was wrinkled since he was an old man, and with a piteous look on his face, a feeling of sorrow on his face. And over his shoulder he had a torn brown coat, and it was all dirty. His thick boots that he was wearing were also torn, it was patched, and in one hand he had a stick to balance himself, and in the other he was carrying a hat for money. He was a beggar. "What a wonderful model," whispered Huey as he shook hands with his friend. "A wonderful model?" shouted Trevor at the top of his voice. "I should think so. You won't meet a beggar like him every day." "Poor old man," said Huey. "How miserable he looks." "Of course," replied Trevor. "You don't want a beggar to look happy, do you?" "How much does a model get for a sitting?" asked Huey. 10 pence an hour." "And how much do you get for your picture, Alan?" "Oh, for this I get £2,000, Huey whispered as he shook hands with his friend, and he said, "What a wonderful model, like a perfect beggar." So Trevor was shocked, and he was like, "A wonderful model?" He screamed, and then he said, "I should think so. You won't meet a beggar like him every day." So Huey started feeling very bad for the old man, and he was saying, "Look how miserable he looks. He's such a poor old man." So Trevor says, "Of course, you don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? Obviously, beggars look sad. They look miserable. So when I'm painting, you don't think that I have to paint a beggar who looks happy." And then Huey asked him, "How much do you pay for a model? Like for sitting in front of the painting so that you could finish your painting. How much do you pay him?" So he said 10 pence an hour. And then he asked Alan, "How much do you get for your picture? After you finish the entire painting, you sell it. So how much do you get for your painting?" So he said, "Oh, for that I get £2,000. "Well, I think the model should get some part of that," cried Huey, laughing. "He is working quite as hard as you." "Nonsense! Nonsense! Why, look at all the trouble of putting on the paint and standing up all day. It's not easy work, I can tell you. Now do stop talking, I'm very busy. Smoke a cigarette and keep quiet." So Huey, again he felt bad, and he said, like, maybe even the model should get some part of that, because he's also working quite hard as you, and he's getting just 10 pence an hour. You are earning £2,000. So Trevor, he got a little upset, and he said, "Nonsense. Why, it is not a big deal. I know it's not easy to keep standing, but I am putting more effort here, so now you do stop talking. I'm very busy. You just smoke a cigarette and keep quiet." The moral. After some time, a servant came to tell Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. "Don't go away, Huey," he said as he went out. "I will be back in a moment." The old beggar man sat down on a wooden seat that was behind him. He looked so lonely and sad that Huey could not help feeling sorry for him. He felt in his pockets to see what money he had. All he could find was a sovereign. Now after some time, a servant came to tell Trevor that the frame maker of the painting, he wanted to speak to him. So what does he do is, Trevor, he says, "Huey, don't go away. I'll just go out for a moment and I'll be back. So don't leave till then. Stay." So he left. Now it was just the beggar man and Huey inside that room. Now the old beggar man, he sat down on a wooden seat that was behind him because the painter was not there, so he thought of taking a little bit of rest. Now this beggar man, he was looking very lonely and he was very sad. So Huey felt very sorry for him, and he started searching in his pockets if he had any money so that he could give it to him. And all he could find was a sovereign. Sovereign is a gold coin. It is worth 1 sterling. And 1 sterling in Indian rupees, it might be around 100 rupees, approximate. Poor man, he thought. He needs it more than I do. And he walked across the room and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand. The old man jumped, and a faint smile crossed his lips. "Thank you, sir," he said. "Thank you." Then Trevor arrived, and Hughie said goodbye and left, feeling a little silly at what he had done. That night he went to the Pallet Club at about 11 o'clock and found Trevor having a drink by himself. "Well, Alan, did you get the picture finished all right?" he asked as he lit a cigarette. "Finished and framed, my boy," answered Trevor. "And you might like to know that the old model you saw likes you very much. I had to tell him all about you, who you are, where you live, how much you earn, what you are going to do in the future." Now Huey is thinking to himself, poor man, he needs it more than I do, the money. So what he does is he walks across the room, he goes near the beggar, and he slips this gold coin into the beggar's hand. He gives it to him. And the old man, he was shocked, he jumped, and a faint smile crossed his lips. He started smiling and he was like, "Thank you, sir, thank you." Then Trevor arrived. Huey said goodbye and he left from there. And he was feeling a little silly for what he has done. He just gave him a gold coin, a single gold coin. He felt it was silly, but again he left. He felt bad for that beggar, that's why he gave it. Now that night he went to the Pallet Club. He went to a club at about 11 o'clock and he found Trevor there and he was drinking by himself. So he goes there and he says, "Well, Alan, did you finish the picture that you were doing?" he asked, lighting a cigarette. So Trevor says, Yes, I have finished it, finished and framed. And you might like to know that the old model, the beggar man, he was really interested in you. He likes you very much. And I had to tell everything about you to him. Who you are, where you live, how much you earn, what you are going to do in the future." "My dear Alan," cried Huey, "I shall probably find him at home waiting for me. But of course you are only joking. Poor old thing. I wish I could do something for him. I think it's dreadful that anyone should be so miserable. I have got heaps of old clothes at home. Do you think he would like any of them? Why, his rags were falling to bits. But he looks so wonderful in them," said Trevor. "I wouldn't paint him in a good suit for anything. However, I'll tell him of your offer. And now, tell me, how is Laura?" The old model was quite interested in her. "You don't mean to say you talked to him about her too?" cried Huey. "Certainly I did. He knows all about the Colonel, the lovely Laura, and the 10,000 pounds. So Huey says, "My dear Alan, I think I might find him waiting for me outside my home. But of course you're only joking." So he took it in a very lighter sense. Obviously no one goes around telling each and everything about a person to other person. So he felt bad again and he said, "Poor old thing, I wish I could do something for him. And he looked so miserable. I have lots of old clothes at home. Maybe he would like any of them. And his clothes which he was wearing, it was all falling into bits." So Trevor says, "But he looks so wonderful in them. And I wouldn't paint him in a good suit for anything. I cannot paint a beggar in a full 3-piece suit. But however, I'll tell him about your offer." Then he tells, "Tell me, how is Laura?" Then again he tells that the old model was quite interested in her. He wanted to know Laura's story too. Now Huey was shocked. He cried. He said it in a very loud voice, saying that, "You don't mean to say you talked to him about her too? You told everything?" And Trevor was like, "Yes, I did. He knows everything about Colonel, Laura's father, about Laura, about the 10,000 pounds. The surprise. "You told that old beggar all about me?" cried Huey, looking very red and angry. "My dear boy," said Trevor, smiling, "that old beggar, as you call him, is one of the richest men in Europe. He could buy all London tomorrow and never miss the money. He has a house in every capital city, eats off gold plates, and can prevent Russia going to war when he chooses. What on earth do you mean? Exclaimed Huey. What I say, said Trevor. The old man you saw today was Baron Hosburg. He is a great friend of mine, buys all my pictures and that sort of thing. He asked me a month ago to paint him as a beggar, and since he is paying, well, I could not refuse. And I must say, I think he made a splendid model. Now Huey was very angry. He was red in anger and he said, "You told that old beggar everything about me?" So Trevor smiles and he said, "My dear boy, that old beggar, as you are calling him, he is one of the richest men in Europe. He could buy all London tomorrow and still he will have so much of money with him. He won't miss a money. That much money he has. And he has a house in every capital city. And he eats from gold plates." So Huey was shocked and he was like, "What do you mean?" So Trevor says, "What I want to say is that the old man you saw today was Baron Hosburg, and he is a great friend of mine. Most of the time he purchases my pictures. And he asked me a month ago, he wanted me to paint him as a beggar, and since he is paying me, I could not refuse. I said okay. He made a splendid model. He was perfect." "Baron Hosburg!" cried Huey. "Good heavens! I gave him a sovereign!" "Gave him a sovereign?" shouted Trevor, and he burst into a roar of laughter. "I think you might have told me, Alan," said Huey crossly, "and not let me make such a fool of myself." "Well, to begin with, Huey," said Trevor, "I did not think that you went around giving away your money in that way. And really, when you came in, I didn't know if Hosburg would like his name mentioned." So Huey cried. He screamed and he's like, "Baron Hosburg? Good heavens! I gave him a sovereign." So Trevor again shouted and he started laughing. He said, "Gave him a sovereign, one of the richest man in the entire Europe, and you gave him a gold coin?" Now Huey was angry and he says, "Maybe you should have told me before, Alan, and I wouldn't make a fool out of myself in front of him." So Trevor says, "Oh, Huey, I did not think that you went around giving away your money in that way. He never thought about it. And really, when you came in, I didn't think that even Baron Hosburg would like his name to be mentioned there." "What a duffer he must think me," said Huey. "Not at all. He was very happy after you left. He kept laughing to himself and rubbing his old hands together. I couldn't understand why he was so interested in you at the time, but I see it all now. He will invest your sovereign for you, Huey, and pay you the interest every 6 months. He will also have a good story to tell his friends after dinner." Huey walked home, feeling very unhappy and leaving Trevor laughing loudly. So Huey says he might be thinking, "What a duffer, what an idiot I am." So Trevor says, "Not at all. He was very happy after you left, and he kept laughing to himself, and he was rubbing his old hands together. And at that time I did not understand why he was so interested in you, but now I understand that you gave him a sovereign. But don't worry, he is gonna invest your sovereign and he's gonna pay you the interest every 6 months. And now when he goes to have dinner with his friends, he will also have a very good story to tell." And Huey was very unhappy and he went away from there. He walked home and Trevor was left there laughing. He was laughing very loudly. The messenger. The next morning, as he was eating his breakfast, his servant brought in a card on which was written, "Mr. Gustav Norden, messenger of Baron Hosburg. I suppose he has come for an apology," said Huey to himself, and he told the servant to show the visitor in. An old gentleman with gold spectacles and grey hair came into the room and said with a French accent, "Do I have the honor of speaking to Mr. Erskine?" Huey bowed. Now, the next morning, as Huey was having his breakfast, his servant came in and he gave a card. And in that card, it was written, Mr. Gustav Norden, messenger of Baron Hosburg. So now Huey started thinking to himself, maybe he has come here for an apology, the thing that I have done yesterday. So he told his servant, let the visitor come in. Now, an old man with gold spectacles and he had grey hair, he came into the room and he was having a French accent. And he said, do I have the honor of speaking to Mr. Erskine? So Huey was like, yes, it's me. I have come from Baron Hosburg. He continued, the Baron, I ask, sir, that you will offer him my sincerest apologies, cried Huey. The Baron, said the old gentleman with a smile, has asked me to bring you this letter, and he held out a sealed envelope. On the outside was written, a wedding present to Hughie Erskine and Laura Merton from an old beggar, and inside was a cheque for £10,000. The wedding. When they were married, Alan Trevor. When they were married, Alan Trevor was the best man and the Baron made a speech at the wedding breakfast. Millionaire models, remarked Alan, are rare enough, but model millionaires are rarer still. So this old man, he continued saying, I have come from Baron Hosburg. The Baron, and immediately Huey was like, I ask, sir, I'm asking you sincerest apologies. Please offer him that. I'm really sorry. So this old man, the old gentleman, he just smiles and he says, the Baron has asked me to give you this letter. And he gives him a sealed envelope. And outside the envelope it was written, a wedding present to Hughie Erskine and Laura Merton from an old beggar. And when he opened that envelope, there was a cheque inside and it was of £10,000. On their wedding day, Alan Trevor was the best man and Baron had been there and he made a speech at the wedding breakfast. Here, Alan Trevor, he remarked, he said that millionaire models are rare enough, but model millionaires are rarer still. It means that only few models become millionaires, but even fewer millionaires are considered as role models in the world. I hope you have understood this wonderful lesson. In case you have any doubts, you can comment below and keep watching for more videos. Do like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.